Hey, everybody. It's Chris, the Urban Bourbonist. I'm coming to you live here from the Urban Bourbon Bunker, as you can see. Tonight's going to be a very fun night. I'm going to have Brandon Collins from Taconic Distilling will be on. He is the head distiller. Thanks, everyone, for coming on in and for joining tonight. This should be a nice conversation with Brandon. Just waiting on him to come in. But a little bit about Taconic. They're located in the Hudson Valley of New York. So it'll be interesting to talk to Brandon. Hey, what's up, Brothers Bourbon Landon? Thanks, everybody, for joining. So it'll be interesting to talk to Brandon about his experience as a distiller in New York, because he does have a background, which we'll learn about, that is outside of New York and in a very traditional place. So it'll be fun as we talk to Brandon about that. And we're going to do a little tasting. They were nice enough to send me this bottle of their cask strength bourbon. And here's Brandon now, so let's bring him in. Hey, Brandon.
How's it going, man?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Is my video froze?
No, I can see you fine. Seems to be working well. How's mine? Am I frozen?
No, it's just my half is frozen on mine, so I didn't know if I was frozen.
Oh no, it looks
Okay.
So far so good. So
right.
Thank you very much for joining me tonight.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to talk to you, and I don't know if you can see there. I put up the the stickers that you guys included in the package that you sent me. So thank you for sending this. First off, for sending the cask strength bourbon. I'm excited to taste that along with you here a little bit later. But let me just introduce you to everyone that's kind of come into the room. So everyone, this is Brandon Collins. He's the head distiller of Taconic Distillery in the Hudson Valley in New York. Stanfordville, is that the name of the actual town that you guys are in?
Yeah, it's pretty small. It's only like a town of a couple hundred people. So
okay.
That's the town that we're in, but the closest town would be Millbrook, is like the bigger town.
All right. So, and Brandon, I was just saying before you hopped on here that I'm interested to talk to you because you have a unique, I feel like you have a unique experience as a distiller, because you have a chemical engineering background, correct?
Yeah. So I graduated from Ohio State with a chemical engineering.
All right, so tell us a little bit about that, like your background. Like, so you came out of college with a chemical engineering background. Typically, I wouldn't think, hearing that someone that has a chemical engineering degree finds their way to distilling. So can you tell us like how you found your way into distilling?
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of people with chemical engineering degrees that have distilling. So we learn a lot of distillation in college. We actually had to like size and figure out the proper steps in the column, basically. So for going from, if you want to say 7% alcohol, if you went all the way up to 90 or 190, so you're looking at like more fuel ethanol background than actual whiskey or something like that is what we're learning. But luckily I had a class that was a fermentation science background. So some of those classes helped me learn brewing and all the fermentation science that goes into the yeast and everything like that. So I put those together and then started out in paper and then went to food and then finally went to whiskey. So.
And where you ended up at your first go at it in whiskey is a very interesting place.
Yeah,
Everyone will know it. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
yeah. So I was at Buffalo Trace. I just wanted to get out of the food industry and get into the alcohol industry. And where I was in Kentucky, I had plenty of great distilleries around me. And luckily, Buffalo Trace had a job open up. I applied for it, and I was a distillery supervisor there. I was right underneath Harlan Wheatley. I was there for 4 years. Actually was over top of Warehouse X for the whole time I was there. So I got to see a lot of stuff that most people wouldn't get to see in a normal stretch of those 4 years. We ran through data points of every 15 seconds on barrels in Warehouse X. So we had a couple million data points when I was there for those 4 years that whiskey was aging there.
So for people that don't know, Warehouse X at Buffalo Trace is like an experimental warehouse, correct? And you guys are trying all sorts of different things there.
Yeah, it's a 20-year experiment. So every 2 years, their plan was to change different parameters of the warehouse. So we could control light, humidity, airflow, temperature, anything you can think of that would normally go into a warehouse changing over periods of time. We could do all that.
Wow, that's crazy. So, I mean, you had to have learned so many different things about what is affecting the aging process while you're overseeing this warehouse that probably translates into a lot of the things that you're doing today, I would imagine.
Yeah, so it gave me a lot of background of what we need to be doing in a warehouse. We don't have clearly the same capital at Taconic as what they do at Buffalo Trace, so we can't do exactly the same thing, but we can use some of those tools to help us get to a better whiskey at a younger age than what most other distilleries could do.
Yeah, for sure. So a little bit more like about your background and kind of as you entered into distilling and kind of moved along to where you are now. Do you have I know that you said that you were working there with Harlan Wheatley, which everyone knows at Buffalo Trace. But do you have somebody that is like a role model and kind of like a mentor to you that kind of helped you along the way and that you're also maybe still in touch with and bouncing things off of? Do you have somebody like that?
I mean, Harlan was a big help when I was there. And like most places, they don't like when people leave. So I haven't had much contact with them since then. So really it's me by myself going out and learning as much as I can on my own. So luckily I have a lot of knowledge of what I need to be learning. And I go down those paths of reading books and gaining any knowledge that I can from other people.
Yeah, that's awesome. So after you left Buffalo Trace, you went on to, where did you go after that?
So we wanted to move up to New York City. So it took me about a year of finding a distillery up in the New York area. I went to Long Island Spirits. I was able to get the chairman's trophy for a rye whiskey there in just 1 year. At Ultimate Spirits competition is what we got that on. But I didn't like the direction the company was going. So we had over 30 different products that we were making. We were making gin, whiskey, rum, brandy, vodka, a whole bunch of liqueurs. So I wanted to get back to just focusing on whiskey. And luckily, the job at Taconic opened up, and I was able to move there and still keep doing what I love with a little better focus on what we're doing. So
yeah, so as far as the distilling at Taconic, is it just you? Like, what's the size of the team there?
Yeah, so we have both of our owners, Paul and Carol Ann. So Carol Ann does a lot of the sales. Paul is usually there helping us out day to day. And then we have a sales manager, and Sean O'Donnell. So he does all of our distributor contracts and all that. And then it's just myself and one assistant that run the distillery every day.
Wow. And can you tell us a little bit kind of like your process at the distillery? Like how often are you running your still? Is it every single day? Is it just a few days a week? Like what's your output on the still?
Yeah, so we're running a 12-inch Vendome column with a pot doubler. So we run 4 days a week. It's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. We're doing 3 and 4 day ferment on our beers. And so from that process, we run everything every day. So we're grinding, cooking, and distilling everything every day. We're making 4 barrels a day.
4 barrels a day. Okay. All right. And what is, tell us a little bit about like your capacity to age whiskey there. Do you have, how many barrels do you guys have on hand that are aging? Like what kind of room do you guys have to age whiskey?
So currently we have about 12 shipping containers that we hold a little over 800 barrels in. And then we have a side little step to our building that we can hold about 400 in, and both of those are all full. And we just finished up a new rick house that's going to hold 2,200 barrels. So right now we have about 1,300 barrels on site.
Oh wow! Okay, and then the new rick house will like double that almost.
Yeah, so we'll be able to fill that up over the next 3 years.
Okay. That's awesome. Okay, so over the next 3 years, you plan to have that filled up. So that must mean you're kind of shooting for a target age for the aged whiskey. Like what to you, like what are you kind of shooting for an age?
Well, so here in May will actually be 4 years on all of our whiskey, which will be a little older than most craft distilleries. There are a few that's starting to get up to that age now. But as we keep going, we're putting away about 60 barrels a month. We're only pulling out about 10. So we'll just continue to grow older and older. So we'll just let that age just keep stacking up on it until eventually, I guess we'll have so much sales that we'll have to increase production a little bit. So,
well, that's what you hope for, right?
Yeah.
So, is like 4 years has got to be kind of like a benchmark for a smaller craft distiller like you guys. Like to get to 4 years, that's got to be a pretty big deal to build up to get to that point.
Yeah, it takes a lot of capital to get up to the 4 years on those, especially if you're making it on your own. But it also gives us the benefit of taking off the age statement. So a lot of people now are always like deterred by those younger ages on there. So that'll help us get to a solid age that we can get a pretty good product out to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I can see why you'd want to get to 4 years because of being able to drop the age statement and the connotation that a younger whiskey may have with people out there. But yeah, I think it's just like you have to taste it first to decide whether or not. I mean, age is, like we all say, age is just a number, obviously. But it's interesting. But do you feel like, based on what you've experienced so far, distilling there at Taconic, like, do you think there is a sweet spot for your whiskeys?
Well, so we do a higher rye bourbon. So I think what I've tasted before of higher rye bourbons, like once they get a little older, that 6 year mark is a really good market where you get some solid flavors and where you're not tasting too young from the corn still, and then the rye's not taking over too much also.
Yeah. So a high rye. So you guys are at, I think I wrote this down. I think I heard this somewhere, read it somewhere. 70% corn, 25% rye, 5% malted barley on the bourbon.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So.
Yeah, that's a nice high rye bourbon for sure.
Yeah.
That's which I cannot wait to taste this with you in a little bit. But can you tell us a little bit about the aging? Are you guys aging in 53-gallon barrels, or are you in smaller barrels, or what are you guys doing there?
So we only use 53-gallon barrels. From the experience that I learned at Buffalo Trace, we just found out that the small barrels don't really give you a good balance of the wood flavor and the aging characteristic of the liquid over time. So that's why I've always been very adamant of staying with the 53-gallon barrels.
Yeah, I've heard that from other people that I've had on that have started with the smaller barrels, and they said, we just wish we would have just gone for the 53 from the beginning and just kind of waited it out instead of trying to rush out the product and not being quite exactly what we maybe wanted it to be. So it's interesting that obviously from your experience at Buffalo Trace, that was huge, learning that the 53 gallon was big. So what expressions do you have then? You have 5 different whiskeys that you're offering?
Yeah, so we do the rye whiskey and the bourbon. We do both of those in the 90 proof and the 115 proof. And then we got the double barrel maple, which is our finished bourbon, and a maple syrup barrel. So we take our bourbon barrel, we ship them out to a local maple syrup supplier. They age maple syrup in it, and then we get them back and age the bourbon back in it for 6 months. And we do a 90, and we currently just did a 115 this year on that. And then we have a cognac barrel finish of the bourbon and a Cabernet finish of the bourbon. And then most recent was the Mizunara finish barrel for the bourbon that we just did.
Oh, nice. So are you actually sourcing Mizunara barrels then?
Yeah, so luckily we had a Cooper that's right by us, about 15 minutes north. It's called Titan Barrels, and he was actually able to source the Mizunara. So it's a metal shell with oak heads and then oak staves inside of it.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting. All right.
So it's the same surface area. It's just less wood overall. So it brings down the cost a little bit and makes it a little more eco-friendly, especially for that tree that doesn't really grow that well. So.
Yeah, right. Because I was going to say, if you guys are sourcing those, I know those can't be inexpensive to source Mizunara. Probably the way you're doing it is probably not inexpensive.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So when you're doing those finishes, and you're putting it into the barrel that you're finishing in, how are you determining when to take it out? Are you tasting along the way, or?
Yeah, so the other finishes they already had before I got there, but the Mizunara, I knew we were probably going to shoot for the 6-month range, and luckily that worked out to be where it was, because I tasted it about once a month over that time, and I noticed a really big change between month 5 and month 6, and I decided to pull it before it got overly woody. So luckily it worked out exactly what we was planning for. So.
Well, that's perfect. Yeah. And then the maple syrup, is that 6 months as well that you age it in the maple syrup barrel? Yeah.
Yeah. So all of ours is 6 month finish right now.
Okay. Very cool. Someone's asking, what about Madeira barrels? Any plans for any other kind of finishes at this point?
Yeah. So we have a rye finished in Madeira right now.
Oh, you do? Okay. Oh,
yeah.
That's very cool. And then are those all just seasonal releases, or are those?
Yeah, so we do those in May and November. So we do them twice a year, and it's only a barrel each. So it's only about 60 cases max is what we're getting out of it.
And you're selling your distribution is how many states now?
So we're currently in 16, I believe. And then we're looking at getting into Kentucky, hopefully here in May. We're working on that. So they wanted to wait until we got up to the 4-year product before we get into Kentucky. So
probably smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about Illinois, where I'm at?
So we've been looking at Illinois. We haven't got a good distributor yet for contact for there. So that was one of our states. Also, Michigan was another state that reached out to us that we're looking to get into.
Okay, very cool. So, 16 states right now, that's a pretty solid distribution. That's got to be somewhat tough to keep up with 16 states for distribution. Yeah,
so that's why we haven't expanded a whole lot, because we want to be able to keep focus on all the states that we're in. And we're still very lacking in New York City, so we still have a lot of ground to build in New York City. So we're just trying to focus on the local areas as much as possible, too. Because every day is pretty much a battle with all the distributors. Being a small guy, we don't have the pull like some of the bigger guys that can say, all right, just put us in that store. So.
Yeah, right. I can imagine it's a bit more difficult.
Yeah.
So I know that you know Carson PC Whiskey, and he told me to ask you a question.
Yeah.
He told me to ask you, do you like peach benchmark? I don't know.
So,
I don't know.
hold on. So my parents really like it, and I believe they're watching. So they always send me a bottle of it. So you can see it there. I like the apple benchmark a little better when I used to work there, especially for mixing. I would always drink that one. But if I'm going to drink straight whiskey, I wouldn't drink it though.
I didn't even know there was such thing as a peach benchmark.
Yeah.
That's funny. So your parents are into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about the pricing so that people know like what your whiskeys typically go for, price range?
Yeah, so the 90 proof bourbon and rye will be around the $40 range, depending on the size of the store. Might be a little lower, might be a little higher. Yeah. And then the barrel proof, we're at around $60 a bottle. And same way there, could be higher, could be lower. The maple bourbon's usually around $50. And then the Mizunara was a little higher. I think we're around 90 or something around there, but we didn't have much distribution on that one.
Yeah, those are all definitely reasonable prices, especially for, I mean, it's actually very reasonable for being a small craft producer to be, you know, that competitive on pricing. Because this always comes up, like I've talked to a lot of craft distillers, and a lot of things that people always say is, well, you know, it costs so much, or it's so expensive, but they're not thinking like, okay, we're not talking about one of the big, huge, gigantic distilleries out of Kentucky. You know, it's a bit of a different process, and it's much more expensive for you guys to produce whiskey than Buffalo Trace.
Yeah, so like when I was at Buffalo Trace, you got to think we hadn't paid really for a piece of equipment in over 30 years. So we had zero cost except for the grain coming in and the barrels, and that's about it. Versus like a lot of distilleries, you're still paying back all the still, your cookers, fermenters, all that still coming in the last 5 years or so.
Yeah. How long have you been with Taconic?
A little over a year now.
Okay, all right. So you're making your mark there now by this time.
Yeah.
You had mentioned the still, and I don't want to get too nerdy about it, but you guys are using a column still.
Yeah.
And so can you tell, like, just, I don't know if you can do it briefly or if you can kind of boil it down for us, like, what's the difference between using that and a pot still, and how is that going to change the whiskey?
So a column still just allows us to be a little more efficient. So we can run a lot more liquid through it in a smaller amount of time with a smaller still. So we're running a 12-inch column still with the pot doubler. So we're still doing the double distillation like a lot of people would do with a pot still. Because the pot still, you're going to do a strip run and then a rec run. And when you do your strip run, you're going to be very cloudy and a lot of oil still left in it in the pot still. So when you do your second run, you're clearing it up a lot, but you're still going to have a lot more oils in it in a pot still compared to a column still. So a lot of people associate those oils with flavors and mouthfeels, but we can also run our column still at different proofs, and we can get a lot of those oils in it. So instead of continually checking for a cut between heads and tails and all that for like what you'd have to do on a pot still, I can just run to a proof, and that's giving me all my cuts all at the same time continuously. Yeah,
that's the advantage for sure. I learned a little bit about the heads, hearts, and tails. I did the executive bourbon steward class down in Louisville. So we actually did a distillation like throughout the course of the day, and so and we were literally having to sit there and like kind of taste and see kind of like where we were at, and we're kind of trying to do it off a taste, and like I don't know exactly what I'm tasting when it comes to, you know, heads, hearts, and tails. Like So it's interesting. It's definitely a very different process.
Yeah, I mean, we had to go through a whole tasting panel review when I was at Buffalo Trace. So we would have to differentiate. You'd have 3 cups in front of you. 2 would be the same, 1 would be different. And you'd had so many different types of liquor that you had to try. And if you couldn't differentiate that, then you weren't on the tasting panel. So luckily, I was able to pass all that. And so you get to learn all those, and you can tell a lot of different flavors really quick if you know what you're looking for. But if you just kind of throw it to somebody that hasn't had a whole lot of training, they probably wouldn't pick out most of those fine details that's in it.
Yeah, so in our class, like part of the class was sensory, and they had the heads, hearts, and tails in front of you, and you had to taste and say which was which. I mixed up 2 of them, so I didn't do as well on that, but it's kind of hard to pick it out if it's like, if you don't really know, or if you haven't really tried to do it before. So that's interesting. What proof are you distilling to? So what's your entry proof into barrels?
So we can't legally enter the barrel over 125. So that's where we're entering the barrel at. But we're distilling a little higher than that. So we're around 155 proof is where we're distilling. And I'm doing that to strip out some of those oils, because those oils and esters that's all in it at a lower proof take longer to age versus if I'm at that higher proof. And luckily, we're a high rye bourbon. We're still getting a lot of flavor through it because that rye is still coming through.
Yeah. Because that rye really gives. So when you do a higher rye bourbon, that can kind of, it helps, right? Because you get more. You get more of those flavors, and does that help with aging at all? Because I know rye can age faster.
Yeah.
But
so rye doesn't have as many oils in it as corn does, so it'll age a little quicker than like any corn-based bourbon would be.
Yeah. So you'll see. That's why you see ryes come out at a younger age, but they still have like a really bold flavor to them.
Yeah.
So, what's the age on the rise? Is it similar? Is it all the same as the bourbons and everything?
Yeah, we're at 3.5 years right now across the board. So in May we'll be at 4 years on everything. So.
Okay. Someone typed me a question here. They want to know where they can buy it in New York. I can imagine it's all over the place.
Yeah, so it's if they just want to go to their local liquor store, we're distributed through Empire, which is one of the largest ones in the state. So if they got a local liquor store, just tell them to ask their Empire rep, and they'll be able to bring it in. And then otherwise, there's a website called NewYorkCraftSpirits.com, and they'll be able to ship it to them within the state of New York. So.
Oh, all right. So that's okay. That's a really good resource.
Yeah.
Are you guys sold anywhere else online that can ship out of New York that you know of?
I know Arlington Wine and Spirits can ship to some states, but I don't know what states they can ship to. I know it's kind of tricky, like what they can get by with. So.
Yeah, the laws are all weird depending on the different state. But so anyway, if anyone's going to New York, just you don't see it, make the request for it, but you'll probably find it where you're going. Your grains and all of that, you guys are really a really local setup. Like you're sourcing pretty much everything from within New York, yeah?
Yeah, so we're a New York farm distillery. So it's a legal definition for us in the state of New York. So we have to use at least 75% New York grown grain. But we go above and beyond that. We use 100%. So we have a farmer that's about 6 miles from us. We get all of our corn from him. Most of our rye will come from him next year. And then all of our malted barley comes from one single supplier down in the lower region of New York.
Okay, so 100% New York. That's awesome. That's great. So someone said here, Arlington can ship for everyone out there, to New York, Kentucky, and Tennessee. So you're a lucky soul if you're in one of those states. So I'm just going to reintroduce you real quick here, Brandon, because a lot of people have kind of come in and out. So for everyone that's joined, thank you very much. I am talking with Brandon Collins, who is the head distiller at Taconic Distillery in the Hudson Valley in New York. Stanfordville, New York is the town. Brandon, tell us a little bit about if people want to come visit you out there. What's the distillery like? Is it open every day? Like, how does it work out there?
Yeah, so since we're a farm distillery, that also gives us the benefit of having a tasting room where we can sell cocktails and do tastings or flight tastings of our whiskeys. But we're only open Saturdays is the only day from noon to 6 currently. Yeah, so we're focused on shipping liquor out than it is on premise. Because we're kind of a little bit out far away from everything, so it's not really the most convenient thing to get to, but if you get a chance, it's definitely worthwhile. So we have a whole like hunting lodge looking tasting room. So our owners are the outdoorsman and hunter. So it's kind of like a hunting cabin like esque feel in there.
Wow, that's very cool. Speaking of being out there, you travel quite a distance every day from what I hear to get out to the distillery.
Yeah, so we currently live in Queens, and so it's about an hour and 40 minutes each way to the distillery and back. So.
Yeah, that's a long day. Are you at home right now?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So at least you're home now and you don't have that drive ahead of you. I didn't know if you were like maybe at the distillery still.
No. Yeah, luckily I drive early enough in the morning that I don't hit any traffic, and coming home I usually don't have any traffic because I'm going opposite of everybody.
Yeah. I used to do that commute as well. That was brutal, traveling that far. But so let's talk about what you sent me.
Okay.
You sent me the Taconic Distillery Straight Bourbon Whiskey Barrel Strength. It's 115 proof. This is bottle 12 of 304. So it's not a single barrel though, right? It's small batch.
No, yeah, we do a blend of small batch barrels. So we always it's kind of like a Solera almost is the best way to explain it.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a single tank of bourbon that we're always dumping into, so we always kind of have a consistent flavor. That way, each barrel is going to be a little different, but as we do that little Solera type S thing, we're staying pretty consistent, and it's slowly changing over time.
Yeah.
So the 12 that you have on there, Matt, it was bottled in December, and then the second number is the number of bottles from that month. So that's for us so say somebody said, all right, we have a bottle that tastes bad, we can go back and compare it to another sample.
All right, perfect. So this is from December, and the batch was 304 bottles?
Yeah, so
This is
it
bottle
depends on how
304.
much yeah, it's just bottle 304. So it
Oh,
depends on
okay.
how many times we'll bottle it that month is how many bottles we'll get up to.
All right, perfect. And this one is, I think it says on here, yeah, aged a minimum of 3 years, but we know that you're at 3.5 at this point. Um, so if you're going into the barrel at 125, and this
Yep.
is barrel proof at 115, so you're losing some alcohol.
Yeah, so every time you put any type of alcohol into a wood barrel, you're going loose proof. So the 115 comes mainly from when you do a younger whiskey at a barrel strength. So you dip down pretty low. So from 125, if you pulled it out in about 2 years, you'd be around the 119 range. So we always added a little bit of water to it. It's just so it gave us a consistent number. So now where we're getting up to that 3.5, almost 4, we're pulling out. It's about 122.6. So in that 4 to 5 range, you actually get back up to where you initially started. And so if you see like the George T. Stagg or Stagg Jr., where those are 129 to 140 range, those have just been in there for a very long time. So
yeah,
as
tells you that,
keep going up and up and up. So.
Yeah, because you're getting the evaporation out of the water. Yeah. So barrel strength. Let's give this a try. Do you have some on hand?
Yeah, I already got it right here.
Actually, I have some poured too already. So. So people criticize me when I give tasting notes when I'm talking with someone who made the whiskey. Do you care if I tell you what I taste?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I always hate giving notes to other people because I don't want something to stick in their head. So I always allow other people to taste it, and because if I said something, it would instantly be in your head, and that's the first thing you taste. So.
Well, let me ask you this: instead of tasting notes, is there a certain I don't know if you can tell me, but without giving me tasting notes, but is there a certain profile that you're trying to get? Are you looking to get a deeply spicy woody profile? Are you looking, what kind of were you looking to get out of this particular bourbon?
I mean, since we're that higher rye, we're going to be pretty spicy. I want it to be pretty balanced, so I don't want it to be overly woody like most people would, which I don't think we would be at for this young of a whiskey. If we were 13, 14 years, I would say we would probably get into that woody profile. But yeah, so that's why we kind of do that 125 proof, so it retains more of the spirit flavor instead of the oak flavor into it.
Yeah. All right, that's interesting. So, I mean, you guys get a good color on this bad boy just in 3.5 years. It's really
nice. So that's where we got those shipping containers. It helps get a lot of color into it really quick.
Yeah, I was going to say
that extra heat that goes to.
Yeah, so would you compare those being in the barrels being in a shipping container? You'll hear of distilleries that heat cycle their warehouses to kind of, I guess, speed up the aging or pull more from the barrel in a quicker amount of time, we'll say.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the environment that's happening within the shipping container? Because those things got to be getting pretty cold too in the winter, amplification of the cold.
So they actually stay warmer in it. So where it contains that airspace and there's not much air turnover in it, it stays warmer. So we're looking at the total heat that goes into it. So those cycles really don't do as much for you as keeping that total heat. So it's kind of like with wine where they have total heat days for their grapes growing. That's the same way what we're looking for with the whiskey. Is that total heat is what's going to drive your flavor at the end more than anything.
That's very interesting. I haven't heard that before. So that's really cool. Learn something every day. So all right, I'm gonna just give this a quick nose. The color's great. So for me, I do get that sweet corn, and I get a dose of a nice spice, which I would imagine is from the rye. this has been sitting a little bit, so I don't get like a ton of like alcohol in my face off of this at all. Even though it is that higher proof, it's just it's nice. It tells you it's there, you know.
Yeah.
And I definitely get like some of those traditional like brown sugar kind of molasses type notes, and a little like sweet oak kind of aroma on there too. It's really nice. I mean, it smells great. But let's give this a taste. Cheers, Brandon.
Cheers.
So this right off the bat, it's nice and bold and spicy.
Yeah.
I love it. It's like as soon as it hits my tongue, it's like it grabs me, kind of just nice, real nice like heat and spiciness to it. And then it's followed by like a nice sweetness too. Like those vanilla is a little bit of like a butterscotchy kind of flavor. And then what I like about this, which I'm just getting now, when I tasted this last night too, just to kind of taste it and kind of familiarize myself with it. But tonight I'm getting kind of like a little like of a bit of a minty kick off of it, which I would imagine is from that rye.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting that last night, but I'm getting a nice like dose of mint on this. It's really nice. Very tasty. And the finish, nice kind of like lingering finish on it too. So this is very, very tasty. So does this meet the sort of profile you were going for?
Yeah. I mean, so it's still a little young, but we'll be there in a couple more years. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what other things are kind of coming down the line from you guys? Do you have any? I know we talked finishes. Do you have any new products like that you can talk about that might be in the works, like a weeded whiskey or anything along those lines?
Yeah. So if you seen my picture today, you would have seen it. We're doing so today was our first cook of weeded bourbon. So we'll be distilling that next Monday. And then right now, currently this whole week, I've been distilling malt whiskey. So we'll have an American single malt in the next couple of years too.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Malt whiskey and wheat whiskey, how are those when it comes to aging? Like, can those be released a little bit earlier than bourbon?
Yeah, so I mean, most of your American single malts that you have out there are in the 2 to 3 year old range, so that's where we're going to shoot for on that. The weeded bourbon will probably try it out in 2 years, see where we're at. And I had a few little adjustments that I did to boost some flavors into it, and you guys will just have to see those in a couple of years.
Right.
I'll just keep those as little secrets for now. But yeah, even the malt whiskey, I use some darker roast grains in it, so you get some chocolate, caramel, coffee notes into it. So it'll be starting out a lot higher flavor than most other malt whiskeys would be before they go into the barrel.
So did you use more of like what you would consider a beer brewing mash bill for that? Yeah.
Yeah, so it was actually a stout recipe that I used to homebrew with. That's what I use.
Very cool. All right, so that's very interesting. So that's going to be nice. And about 2 years on that.
Yeah, we'll try it out in 2 years, and we're putting all those in the shipping containers, so they'll get more heat into it a little quicker. That way it'll be a little quicker too. So.
Very nice. We didn't talk about this. You guys, you do not do any chill filtering on any of your whiskeys.
Nah.
So you're just basically taking it out of the barrel and kind of straining any of the barrel bits that come out of there, and that's it.
Yeah, so we strain all the char out of it, and then right before bottling, we have like a particulate filter, so it's getting any of that fine char out of it and any kind of junk that would be in it over that time. So, I mean, as being in wood, you're going to pick up a lot of wood chunks and dust and everything out of it. So,
yeah. right. I'm going to ask you this. You don't have to answer it, but do you have like one of these expressions that you kind of grab first, not necessarily, it's something that you kind of go to more than the others that you really enjoy.
Yeah, so right now it's the cognac finish and the Miznara finish are my two favorite right now.
Yeah, those are nice. I mean, those finished whiskeys. Now, I will say those you got to be careful on those because sometimes those finishes take over the base liquid. So it's yeah, those can go south. But I think how you were saying, like you got it dialed in at that 6 month mark, and get it out of there. And everything I've read about the finishes coming out of Taconic is that they're done very, very well. Yeah.
Yeah, like we even had like Breaking Bourbon, I think, review our Madeira and cognac, and they gave us pretty high remarks on how well we did the finish. So.
Yeah, I was doing a little bit of reading. I think I probably saw a couple of those from them today. So yeah, I mean those are definitely the finishing can. I've had some that all you can taste is what the whiskey was finished in.
Mm-hmm.
So the non-chill filtering, that obviously is kind of leaving more of those flavors in the whiskey.
Yeah.
And did you guys make that decision just because like that's what you prefer in a profile from a whiskey?
Well, it's a lot easier to do a non-chill filter also versus a chill filter. So a chill filter takes a lot more time and a lot more equipment that usually most craft distilleries don't have that ability to invest in. And more craft drinkers are shifting towards that non-chill filter. But also where we distill at that higher proof, we want to keep as much flavors as we can into that we're already stripping out anyways in that distillation step. So we want to keep all the flavor that we have left in there back into the bottle.
Makes sense. And it's true. It is like in 2020 that the whiskey drinker is looking. That's like one of the things that's like on their list to check off when they're looking at buying something that maybe they have not tried before. I do it myself. Like I will look at something that I haven't seen before or haven't tried, and I'll look to see, hey, is this non-chill filtered?
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of the time these days, yes, it is. Like especially if it's a craft, like you just said, it's expensive to do it. A lot of equipment involved as well. But I mean, it is something that people are looking at for sure these days.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're cognizant of that, which is really interesting. What else was I going to ask you? I asked you about the price. Oh, the wheat whiskey and the malt whiskey we covered.
Yeah.
Where this is what I wanted to ask you. So, being a smaller distillery, kind of out there farther in New York, away from the city, like what are some of the bigger challenges for you guys as a distillery? On a daily basis, like what's like kind of the hardest thing that you guys have to deal with when you're doing the distilling there?
So it's not so much the distilling; it's basically battling to get our whiskey out to as many people as possible. So it's getting into as many stores as possible, getting into as many states as possible, bars, getting it out to all the Instagram people, just getting our name out there. So that's our biggest challenge probably every day, because we have a really great setup of our still, and so we really don't have as much issues as like other people would probably have on that end of that spectrum.
Yeah, and I can imagine that with social media and everything. Here's an interesting thing. So, like, basically in 2019, Taconic, I feel like, made this huge impression across at least Instagram. I'm really only on Instagram, but I kept seeing there must have been a concerted effort from you guys this past year to kind of like make people more aware of the distillery because it certainly was noticeable. Like before July of 2019, I'd never heard of Taconic, and then I had heard of Taconic continually from that point forward. So, I mean, you guys have done a very good job of kind of getting out and making an impression on Instagram specifically.
Yeah, we've really ramped it up over the last year. We were always kind of shipping bottles out, but I know we're shipping them out probably every week now to different people. And then we're starting to get into that right age is where we wanted to make sure we had a good quality product before we really started pumping our name out there too much too. So we didn't want to be coming in at a 1-year whiskey and everybody try it, hate it, and then you're forever ruined. So you have to have a quality when you're shipping out too. So
that's the thing. So let's touch on this a little bit with social media. Like, how much do you have to think about that? I mean, you're the distiller, but I know that this is still like probably something that you have to deal with and think about in terms of like the message you're going to put out on social media these days. It's got to be something that you're really considering like a lot into what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so really I didn't even have Instagram until I started at Taconic. And I did that so we could start growing our fan base a little bit and so I can interact with some of the Instagram community out there. So really, all my personal Instagram is through work, and that's pretty much it. So luckily I don't have a whole lot of crossover of having to worry about what I do in my day-to-day life, having to worry about what I post there, because it's just stuff that I'm doing at work. I'll post a picture of our grain still running, new whiskeys that we're making, stuff like that.
Yeah, and people can find you. They can see here tonight, but it's the Alchemist 86 on Instagram, and it's a very good follow. So if you aren't following him and you're watching this tonight, follow Brandon, the Alchemist 86, right here on Instagram. Where else can people find Taconic social media-wise and online?
So it'd be at Taconic_Distillery is our Instagram handle. Then we're also on Facebook, but we've focused more on Instagram than we do Facebook. Then also we have a website. It's TaconicDistillery.com. You can see all of our products that we have on there, a little bit about the distillery, the people that work there every day and make our existence possible. And then we also have some little info about all of our whiskeys, so like sales info for everybody. So if they want to learn a little more than what a normal store would have, you can go on there. We'll have some tasting notes, palate notes, everything.
Yeah, so everyone check them out. At Taconic_Distillery is the distilleries Instagram page. You can find them on Facebook too, and you can find them online at TaconicDistillery.com. So Brandon, anything else that you want to add, about yourself, about Taconic before we close this out here, before we run up against the 1 hour mark?
Yeah, so I can see a lot of people putting up Taconic Tuesdays. So I know that's been hitting off a lot recently. So everybody's been taking part of Taconic Tuesdays, I think they call it. So.
A lot of Taco Nick, and then hashtag Taconic Tuesday. So are you encouraging people then to use hashtag Taconic Tuesday every Tuesday? Sure. All right, so let's do that. We're
loving that stuff. We love seeing that up there and all the people putting it out there, especially because what you only really see is like Michter's Monday and Weller Wednesday. So to be up there with those two and have our own day, that's pretty exciting for us. So.
Yeah, heck yeah. Well, I'll be sure that next week on Tuesday I'll do a hashtag Taconic Tuesday, and I'm looking forward to that maple syrup that you sent me as well. So this weekend I'll probably be posting a big stack of pancakes and pouring some Taconic maple syrup on it. So thank you very much for that as well.
Yeah, we always get a lot of stories on Saturdays for that one. It seems like.
I can imagine. Yeah, people pouring it over their pancakes for sure. But Brandon, thank you very much for joining me. And I know it's later for you than it is for me. So for doing this at 8:30 your time, I very much appreciate that.
Thank you.
I think we learned a lot about you. We learned a lot about Taconic tonight. So thank you very much for sharing. And hopefully, as things continue to grow for you guys, you'll keep the Urban Bourbon Hour in mind, and you'll come back on in the future, and we'll talk about all the great growth that you guys have had. So thank you again, Brandon. Cheers. I appreciate it.
Cheers, man.
Yeah. All right, Brandon. Have a great night, and let's stay in touch offline. And all the best to you, and all the best to Taconic.
Same to you, man.
All right, man. Take care.
All
Cheers.
right, see you.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining the Urban Bourbon Hour tonight, for commenting, for participating, and for watching. I think that was a really fun conversation with Brandon. Seems like a really great guy. Was really open and honest about everything that you guys are doing. So if you can, check out at Taconic_distillery here on Instagram. Check out their Facebook page. Check them out at taconicdistillery.com. Find somebody in New York. Find a shop that has these available online, and get yourself some Taconic. I do have to say that tasting this barrel strength bourbon tonight, I actually tasted it last night too before this, just to see if I was going to like it or not. This is a really quality whiskey. It's a great expression. It's got a lot of flavor. It's got the traditional bourbon notes for you, and actually some great crossover like rye notes. This is a really good kind of combination of bourbon and rye, this cask strength bourbon from them. So check them out, guys. I appreciate you very much for watching. And until next time, this is Chris, the Urban Bourbonist, coming to you from the Urban Bourbon Bunker. Hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.